Do people bring those to your drawing classes that you teach?
I haven't seen it. No.
I mean,
no, people have. No, I think it's pretty clear in the descriptions that
that's not.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not prejudiced that much against it. I mean, I think it probably has a place, but I don't think it's the best way to learn how to draw.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're much better off holding a pencil or color. I don't know if we can take a look at the whole right here, or if there's anything that we have talked about that needs to be talked about. There's a big portrait of John Noble outside. I guess everybody has seen it, and that's obviously the only figure. Somebody had asked me, but I think she left maybe. About doing things that were not barrack. And obviously I do. And then I did a whole body of work of large portraits of people along that size scale, that size in the 80s, mostly in the 80s I did that. But that was a great experience doing his portrait. He sat for me. I didn't do that all from life. I did a lot of that from with photography too, but he did sit for me for
question. So, I've been listening to a lot of what you've been describing in terms of what interests you, and I've heard you say form, texture, light, knowing places. Are there any other kind of major drivers besides those that you think about or that you want to talk about?
Sometimes, there's a certain kind of well, it's interesting because I wrote about it in that painting. Is Sheila still here? Sheila. So, you read about Montague's store? Did you read that? Which one? Because somebody just asked me about other things that can influence you to attract you to want to make a picture. And so that little place, when I was a small child, my grandfather had horses on Staten Island, and he kept them on, believe it or not, the corner of Highland Boulevard and Richmond Avenue. You could actually have horses there. Pretty serious. And there was a Western riding store. It was called Montague's, and it was a storefront. And I'm not sure exactly where it was. If it was on that side or the side that's not even pictured. But so every time I would go by there for decades, I would think of my grandfather and him taking me there and I'd walk in, and they had, as I remember, a horse. Did you look at that? Yeah, they had a horse. And you'd smell the leather of saddles and boots, and I have very vague memories of it, but something like that stirs the memory and attracts you to a place. And if it's a place that also is visually appealing to you, visually interesting for some reason, then that becomes part of the experience too.
By the way, so I was just looking at the corner of Richmond and Highland. I wasn't listening to your answer. I just had to look right away.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of horses.
Did you ever have a ride?
Not for me, no. Because I think when I was at that point they had changed the whole thing and he gave up the horses, but he was still going to the store. I have photos of him in that I guess you call it corral, stable, whatever.
Glad people like you did the old boats, because when I was on 5, the practice would be come up from Stapleton area to Long Richmond Terrace, all the way down to the end. You'd see all that, this is the 70s, so you'd see all the stuff, which is probably gone by now. So,
what happened is I did this work around 2007, 2008, 2009, and then we had two hurricanes come through. And most of this, like this totally gone. This etching, that I believe to be the last remains of the brick factory. And I think somebody, whoever knocked it down, left that up as like a souvenir of this whole industry that had basically ruled that area. But everything, so many of these other vessels are gone. The guy who developed this area wanted to remove everything. He wanted to get rid of it. And the EPA said, you can't do that because those vessels have formed the tidal waves and all the water life and so forth were dependent upon it, and you can't just rip it out, you know? So he used to come down and photograph me painting these old vessels so he could sell it as a quaint aspect.
I think it's on some website actually, yeah.
Was the deer there?
There were deer there.
Oh, so that is.
Yeah. I used to see a lot of geese, a lot of deer, rays. I used to see rays come in, and they'd be in the shallow part of the water. It's really interesting to see that.
It's amazing that they could live in the Arthur Kill.
Right.
It's a real,
I think they came in from the ocean, obviously, but yeah.
pretty hardy to be able to survive in that kind of water.
Is that a fawn or a doe?
I didn't ask.
Did you do any artwork along Ellis Street before they, like where LaBella was, there used to be piers and the old ferry abandoned
It's called a
there?
note from Tottenville.
Oh, okay,
And I drew it in 1984
yeah.
from, after John Noble died, his sons gave me his Jeepster. He had a 1969 Jeepster, and it was convertible, so you could sit up high, and it was perfect for working outdoors, because you were elevated much higher than a regular automobile. And again, this is, back at that time, you could still get up close to things like those old ferries. I walked on
Oh,
those
yeah, we
ferries.
walked on piers, like to your point, before you said everything was all fenced off now,
Right.
back then there's no old you just went down Ellis.
Exactly.
Had the Hotel California at the end of the street and
Right.
Tottenville Marina, about it now.
Right, and you could walk right up to these things, and you could examine them, and hang out there, and
And just walk at your own risk.
right. But yeah, so that would be the one that I did like that. Say that again?
The hubcaps and the Teamsters in our permanent collection.
I donated the hubcap from that car to the museum.
On the whole set, just one.
Which area would you say that you painted that has changed the least over the
The fresh kills. I always think about that when I go through the fresh kills because it being what it is was not developed, you know. And I don't have any fresh kills pictures in here, but I did a number of things there. But yeah, so that would be one place. Yeah.
Have you been to the new park at all? I haven't.
I've been to the park they opened, and I've been every time you can go in. A lot of times I'll go in. And at one point, right before 9/11, they were allowing people to come in there. And I went in, I was doing some drawing, and I started taking a tour of it, and I was driving. And it was a little scary because I would say a pack of maybe 10 dogs at one point started chasing my car. And I was thinking, my goodness, if I break down here, you're in trouble. Because those days, I'm sure, are long gone, you know, after everything that went on there. But it was still pretty rustic. It was pretty rural, you know, rural, undeveloped in that whole area, dirt roads and everything back then, you know, 25 years ago. When I was doing that.
Bill, I was wondering if you talk about the picture of the case that looks like a photograph that you might have cut up and just
Yeah, so I did put that in sort of as a little example of that, of the process that a lot of times when I do particularly landscape work, but other things too, I'll collage something. Like I'll take photographs, or sometimes just pieces of scraps of paper that represent shapes, that could become forms, and I will play out the composition of what I want to do using that method.
You've done that a lot, is that something?
Right, yeah, I have quite a few collages like that. So that, there's actually two, there's that one, and there's also one you get before, which is purely photographed, but it's a whole, I just had, like, took an idea and then played with it, with multiple images of the same building. But it's a good way to, I mean, you're not sure what you want to do as an artist, you know, I kind of work I do, and yeah,
Another thing, I'm not an artist, so I'm not familiar with the difference between those. But the Three Bridges, you talked about the mirror image and the prints. Could you just explain that? And John Noble was harshly critical of your.
So there was a question, he has a question about, like, I wrote a little bit about it, is when you make a print, it's the reverse of what you draw. And, you know, and she brought up again John Noble, who I used to discuss that with, and he thought it made a difference if you reversed it or not. And sometimes it does, in terms of, if you know, particularly in terms of sales, because if you could do a landscape, but people are confused because something that they're familiar with is in the wrong side, sides are flipped, right? And if you read, I don't know how many of you were able to read some of my tales next to the pictures, but there's a story about that print in the corner, which was one of my first lithographs, Three Bridges, which was done from the World Trade Center. And John Noble came to an opening I had of a show where and he was in a particularly bad mood that day because Demian's Hop Brown had just burned down. And those of you who've been around a long time know that there was a John Noble room in Demian's. But his work was miraculously removed a couple of days before the fire. Fate really intervened, and none of his work was lost, but the room and his handiwork was lost, the things that he built in there. Anyway, came to my opening, and then one of the points of tension that we had was that I didn't reverse some of my images, such as the Three Bridges, and also, but more important, also and that one of the Brooklyn Bridge, and we had a few words about that. He thought I should have reversed it. And but the philosophical aspect of it, I discussed with him, and I'm still thinking about it. At the time, I thought a good drawing, it didn't matter if you reversed it or not, because it would be a good drawing. But I've begun to, and he took the other side of that, and now I see that I think it might be true that aesthetically, in a way I don't quite understand, something works in a particular way may not work quite as well when it is reversed. It's just an interesting point for any artist to think about, or to look at your own work, reverse it, and see how it holds up. When I'm drawing, I often reverse, like I'll hold a mirror behind my drawing, because it gives you, it does reverse it, and it shows it to you in a whole new light. And that freshness of seeing it, you can see where things are that perhaps, if you do a portrait, especially, it'll show you where things are not quite right in terms of placement of features. You know. So,
It's all different visual.
yeah.
It's entirely different.
Right.
Obviously, computers is like flip it.
So,
It's that much more difficult.
well, you know, when you do an etching, there was a famous etcher, Marion, Charles Marion, and this was in the 1870s, and what he would do, he did all those things with the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and he would work with a mirror, and he would set himself up, and go to the cathedral, but set up a mirror, and then draw the mirror, the reflection, so then he was getting it right the right way, and he would draw from that on his etching plate. So people used all kinds of methods.
And you use mirrors as well.
Sorry?
You use mirrors as well at your work.
Not like that. I haven't done that. But, I, like if I'm working from a drawing and photographs, I'll flip that if I do want it to print right, correct, as we see it. Yeah.
As a drawing and then you use mirror actually to.
Well, if I take a drawing, I'll photograph it. Flip the photograph, print it, and have it flip as a print, and work it that way. Do everything backwards, and then it prints as the original was.
Do you have a photostatic memory?
So
Do you have a photostatic memory?
it's less and less as I get older, that's for sure.
If you don't mind me asking, how long did it take you to do this one?
How long?
How long did it take?
When people say, how long does it take you to do a drawing? I think of the famous, the artist Whistler, American artist Whistler. And he actually sued a critic, John Ruskin, because Ruskin criticized his work, and they had a big court case. And he was asked in the court, well, how long did it take you to do the painting? Because this was about 1890, and work was still going through becoming less traditional in many ways. And so Whistler replied, well, it took me about 2 hours to paint it. He said, but it took me 50 years to understand how to paint it, So that's a big part of it, too. But it is interesting. I mean, it's a good question, like how long does it take you to do, like that particular big watercolor painting? That took me a long time to figure out how to do it. The actual mechanics of doing it probably took 50, 60 hours, something like that.
Actually, when I first walked into this room, I was engrossed with this one, that one, and the big one, and that one on the left. It's got a three-dimensional view of that one over there. Beautiful.
Bill, is there any subject matter or location that has eluded you up to this point in time that
Has eluded me? There's a million things that I'd like to draw or paint if I could do it without, set an easel up in the middle of, a particular neighborhood or something without people bugging you and without the police coming. Like situations, you see things all the time that would be really interesting on the streets of Manhattan. I don't have it in me. There are many painters who totally block that out. And I know a guy who's fantastic. I met him on Instagram, and he paints all over Manhattan, the streets, and he doesn't care. People come by and they talk to him and everything, but I can't do that. I just can't do it. So, unfortunately, that's a big part of it.
You
But
can,
there's probably million places.
you can make a painting of police chasing you.
Police chasing.
Oh, this is.
Envision police chasing you and interrupting your work.
I'll have to remember that.
It's a big miss,
What?
I noticed you have a lot of, digital transients things over here on. What's your big miss that you thought, I should have gotten?
Oh, the miss. Oh, Lord. I mean, one thing I always tried to draw that I was never successful in getting what I wanted was the dredging of the Arctic Hill. Ray may remember the trenches outside of
I do.
Ray's old Tubbs restaurant. I used to work in the parking lot there, and it was always an incredibly, as John Noble would say, Wagnerian episode of like lights and water at night, and this noise and this thing digging up the ground and water flying and buckets lifting out of the water. It's probably more than I can do. Maybe a movie would be more appropriate for it, you know. But I was never. It always, every time I look at the drawings I did, I think, geez, wish I had gotten that, you know. And because it's a kind of a thing that is very temporary, you only have a certain period of time to work on that subject, because it'll be gone in a week or a day. Right, exactly.
It's not still.
Right. Okay. Sure.
Bridge views.
Yeah, Bridge View is great. It's a good place to work. Yeah, absolutely.
That's all that is, bridge views.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything has like sub-threads, you know, like the work that's, like I could probably have so many different shows or exhibits now because I have like bridges. Yeah, or different neighborhoods, you know. I don't, you know, it's like, I do that, I do master, I do printmaking, but I don't think of myself as a printmaker, because I do multiple things. I'm not really a portrait artist, although I've done lots and lots of portraits. You know, I just do all of that. You know, I just like doing all the work, so.
Is it our time involved with work?
No, I would say it's probably 10 to 20%. 25% maybe.
The most popular?
Yes and no. I'm not sure. Not today on Instagram. On Instagram, everybody wants to see faces. If you do a face, if you do a head, you get a lot of people paying you attention. But not so much landscape. Landscapes get lost on the new social media, which, let's face it, is a huge. The audience is huge because there's not many places left to show you drawings or paintings. At least for me, and for most artists I know, there's less and less places now. Paradox. You know, as we move into the future, it's like less and less venues for people.
You know, it's a very artist, portrayed in the life of the museum. I had a bunch of problems with these guys now.
They were
realistic, idealistic issues of the wilderness. There was no Indian in there.
yeah, well, you know, that's revisionist history.
They usually are, this is like, it's a shame, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that'll all pass. The art of the those are things that are going on today.
These are the times that you all see passion. Landscape seem like, but they're always there. Every day. They're just absolutely fine.
Thank you, I enjoy it very much.
Another one of those. That's it's my son Anthony. I'm sure everybody does. You know, that's why we like this. We were just down at Gresham. I was motivated to do these drawings on the cabinet of the German restaurant. We went off together and walked through the cemetery. So one of them and the boats were right there, almost entirely washed. Then we went down to the south, and it's like a driveway. Then we went down there.
We can go all the way down the street.
it's delicious, it really is. I, Mary Hatch from the Lilac, asked if,
Were you catching that? Did he say?
oh,